Hey there, HorseCenter fans. Matt and I are back with another exciting edition of the show. Matt, we're jumping on the Kentucky Derby Trail, and we're doing it on the Big Easy this week.
We sure are back to New Orleans for the second stop there. It's the first of the new higher point Kentucky Derby prep races, the Risen Star.
Risen Star 1, Risen Star Division 2, plus a very good Kentucky Oaks prep in the Rachel Alexandra. We're also going to look back at some of the big races on the Kentucky Derby Trail from last week, all right now here on HorseCenter. Welcome to another edition of HorseCenter, everyone. I am Brian Zipsy, and as always, I have the great pleasure of being joined by my co-host to the East Coast. That's Matt Shipman. How are you today, Matt?
I am good, Brian. I'm feeling like we got a big, easy show coming up on the Kentucky Derby Trail.
Big and easy, Matt. That's how you like it. Before we go down New Orleans way to the fairgrounds and a huge day of racing at Fairgrounds, Matt, though, let's look back a little bit at a couple of Kentucky Derby preps, if you will. Maybe the San Vicente isn't a true Kentucky Derby prep in every sense of the word, but I think both races at Santa Anita and Tampa Bay Downs may have implications as we move forward to that first Saturday in May, Matt. Let's start out in California. The San Vicente, Nadal only had one race coming in, Matt, yet he was a huge favorite over the two-year-old champion, Storm the Court. Did you see everything you wanted to see out of the Son of Blame?
I'm not sure I know what I wanted to see, but I certainly didn't see another Justify out on the racetrack, which is what I think a lot of people were hoping they might see according to the odds that were on the board. And, according to similarities, there was talk this was Baffert's best horse, broke his maiden late, coming back in a stakes race. But no, I didn't see a Justify out on the racetrack there. And quite frankly, I was a little disappointed in what I saw from Nadal in a race that turned out to be pretty slow all the way around the track.
Okay. Now, Matt, last week, I'm going to bring this up not to put you down in any way, but just to discuss. Last week, you had Nadal and Storm the Court. I believe they were like number 2 and number 5 on your Kentucky Derby list. Is what you're saying mean you were dropping both of them because of what you saw in the San Vicente?
Oh, without question, Brian. And I think those early Kentucky Derby top 10 lists, that's what we're talking about here. No doubt, Nadal goes way down on my Kentucky top 10 list. And I don't even know if he'll be in the top 10 next time.
Interesting. Okay. I take a little different view from it. I was more impressed. Of course, I had Nadal and Storm the Court much lower. Nadal, I think I had number 9 or 10, and Storm the Court wasn't even on my list, despite being the two-year-old champion. I thought it was a good prep for both of them moving forward. Nadal is an impressive-looking horse, Matt, and he was between horses. He had a very fast horse. Ginobili is a fast horse, kind of pressuring him the whole way. I thought it was a good race. Is he a Triple Crown winner? No, probably not. But on the other hand, I see a lot of potential moving forward from Nadal. And Storm the Court, people don't accept losing anymore as if you lose, you're not a good horse. And that's just not true. And Storm the Court, I think it was strictly a race to get him ready for other things, 2 turns. And I kind of like the way he finished the race a little bit. Was it a star-making race? No, it wasn't. Nadal won by, little less than a length. That sprinter, Ginobili, seemed to hang with him pretty well. Storm the Court was 4th. So they'll have to move forward, but I wouldn't give up on either one by any means. That's my impression of the San Vicente. I think they're good horses still. And I think we saw some good horses, or at least 2 good horses, coming out of the Sam F. Davis.
Yeah, the Sam F. Davis was certainly a more interesting kind of run race, as seems to be the way in a lot of stakes races at Tampa Bay Downs. They went fast early on in that race. Independence Hall showed a huge improvement coming out of the starting gate for the first time, breaking very, very alertly, which had been an issue in his races before. Broke alertly, got on the lead, faced a lot of challenges out there, and got a huge distance, like a double-digit length distance above the rest of the field, and they battled it out. Fast pace set it up for the eventual winner, Brian.
Yeah, Sol Volante, it was hard to know what we were going to get out of this on a Caracantay, Matt. He was started out as a turf horse, and a very good turf horse, winning his first 2 starts, including the Pulpit Stakes. And then, Bianacon, trainer speak, he said, well, I just wanted to get some dirt kicked in his face in his next race, which turned out to be the Mucho Macho Man. But he was a good third, and he was rallying in the Mucho Macho Man. And as we move forward, that Mucho Macho Man is looking like a better race. That Chance It and as seen on TV, the first 2 finishers, the 2 finishers ahead of Sol Volante that day, ran. But yeah, he rallied up the rail in the Sam F. Davis off that fast pace, and then he was able to deftly kind of move between horses and then swing to the outside, and Independence Hall had something for him, but eventually Sol Volante's rally was too much, and he really put Independence Hall away the last 100 yards. Sol Volante certainly would move up to my top 10 if I had a top 10 right now. He looks like a horse who really is finishing his races strongly. The breeding concerns me a little bit. It looks a little bit more on the mile. Both the sire Caracantay and King Mambo, the broodmare sire, are generally more on the mile side. But it's early on in Caracantay's career as a stallion, so we don't know. Sol Volante certainly finishing these races off well. Independence Hall, as you said, finished gobs and gobs ahead of the rest of the field, and I think there were some decent horses back there. So is it a kind of a death blow to Independence Hall on the road to the Kentucky Derby, or is he still a major contender in your eyes, Matt?
I'm not sure, Brian, because as Independence Hall was battling those horses on the front end and they were coming around the turn and he had taken control of that group of horses, I don't know, it seemed like jockey Jose Ortiz seemed a little bit surprised maybe when he sensed the big challenge coming from Solo Valente, and it seemed like he needed to try and get Independence Hall going again a little bit more. So I'm not sure what to expect. I'm not sure whether more distance, Derby distance, is going to be too much for Independence Hall. So we'll have to see what happens next time.
Yeah, and I thought he ran a good race, but not a great race. And that was kind of the case in the Jerome. Now, that Nashua was so impressive by Independence Hall. Everybody jumped on him as a possible superstar. And the Jerome win and now the second in the Sam F. Davis were good races. Again, they finished way, way ahead of the rest of the field here. But he was no match for Sol Volante, and I, like Matt, have questions about his ability at 10 furlongs too. But definitely a horse I wouldn't give up on, and Sol Volante is moving up quickly on our Derby lists, Matt. And by the way, I love when we pronounce these names differently. I say Sol Volante, you say Sole Volante or something. I'm not sure, but it's fun. We'll get it all together sooner or later. Hey, Matt, let's go down to New Orleans now. We have split divisions. 23 horses entered the Risen Star. The Risen Star, by the way, Matt, is 9 furlongs this year. And I think we have 2 interesting divisions here. Let's start with Division 1. Who's your horse to beat in Division 1 of the Risen Star?
Well, let me say Division 1 is the race where we have the top 3 from the Lecomte in the field. A mile and an eighth at Fairgrounds with that big long stretch run makes things interesting. We've got the Lecomte winner coming back in Enforceable, who I liked in that race. But Brian, in that race, he was almost 7-1 in there, and now we're looking at Enforceable, the likely favorite. I don't like the swing of odds in here. I'm not going to go with Enforceable again. My horse to beat is Silver State, who was second in the Lecomte, had a lot of trouble in that race, bobbled at the break, got bumped, raced very wide for Steve Asmussen. I wasn't on him there with a lack of experience, but I think he could get an awful lot out of Lecomte. And with Enforceable as the favorite, I like the flip-flop in odds here.
Yeah, and I don't know if we'll see a true flip-flop, Matt. Silver State was kind of a surprising favorite in that Lecomte, and I think enough people have talked about a little bit of trouble he had during the race, and then he rallied nicely down the lane where I think Enforceable and Silver State will be close, but I do think Enforceable will be favored. I think you're on the second choice here. We have our Horse Racing Nation odds, which I think have Blackberry Wine as the favorite, but I don't see that. I think Enforceable and Silver State are 1-2 on the odds board, and they both ran good races in the Lecomte, as did the third place finisher, Mr. Monomoy, Matt. Mr. Monomoy was kind of right up there with the leaders most of the way, and he was the one or the only one that really hung on well. But the same day, there was an allowance race, and they ran faster in the allowance race, and they finished quite a bit faster in the allowance race. And I'm looking more at that allowance race, to tell you the truth, as the possible winner here of the Risen Star. I like both of the horses that ran 1-2, and they too were way ahead of the rest. That, of course, was Blackberry Wine, the winner, and Digital, the second place finisher. Digital, one of several horses that Brett Calhoun has that look good, entered in both divisions of the Risen Star. That was his first try around 2 turns. It looked like he had beaten Blackberry Wine during the race, and then Blackberry Wine re-rallied and took the win. I like that race, and I think it might, in the long run, prove better than the Lecomte, not just by time, but Blackberry Wine is a horse who's really bred for distance. Oxbow on one side, son of Awesome Again, who won the Preakness out of an AP Indy mare. Blackberry Wine's been very good in his 2 starts around 2 turns on dirt. He's got turf experience in there for Joe Sharp. He's going to be my top pick, but I think Digital could also move forward in here as a real threat.
I agree with you in liking those 2 horses from that allowance race. I like Digital in there under the training of Brett Calhoun. Blackberry Wine seems to be a better horse on the dirt from the earlier turf races for our friend Joe Sharp training there. So you've got Blackberry Wine on top. For me, Silver State.
Okay. Yeah, and Silver State, Enforceable, Mr. Monomoy, I'm afraid of all 3, but I'm going to go with the same exacta from that allowance race. Blackberry Wine over Digital. And Blackberry Wine, if he's good enough, I just see him as a horse that can run all day long. All right, an interesting first division of the Risen Star. The second division isn't quite as interesting to me, although it is. It's not as wide open. First leg is very wide open. The second leg for me, because I know Dior was number 1 on my Kentucky Derby rankings. So, of course, I know Dior, the runner-up in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, is going to be my top choice in here, Matt.
Yeah, Brian, you should certainly have a lot of interest in this race just for that reason alone. I know how much you like the chances of an Odor in there. Hey, and Brian, he's the most likely winner in this race on his second place finishes in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile and in the Los Al Futurity. Blaine Wright from Golden Gate Fields. For me, I still have some little question marks about those second place finishes because he was looming boldly down the stretch in both of them and looked like he was going to be a runaway winner and somehow ended up in second place. And he's making his first trip out of California to race also. I'm going with a price in this race, Brian. I'm going to go with Liam's Lucky Charm, another son of Kazan, trained by Ralph Nix, coming out of those really tough Florida-bred races at Gulfstream Park. He went over to Tampa Bay Downs for the Pasco at 7 furlongs and ran a big one, Brian. A fast race, a win by 5.5 lengths. Hey, who knows? He could maybe get that speed rolling at Fairgrounds. So I'm going to go with a bigger price than usual here for me with Liam's Lucky Charm.
Yeah, man, and I always enjoy when you're on a horse of some odds. This time I'm not with you, though. Liam's Lucky Charm, there's some good signs there. First, the Pasco, as you said, was a very good performance when he moved from Gulfstream over to Tampa Bay Downs. And second, he knocked heads 3 times with Chance It. And as we were talking already, Chance It we're gaining more respect for Chancet as a serious racehorse. On the other hand, I think he's the speed of the speed here coming off that Pasco, and it's tough. 9 furlongs at Fairgrounds is a tough place to wire races, especially in a big field with other speed. So that worries me. Plus, if you look at his races with Chancet, I like Chancet better. And the only race that Liam's Lucky Charm ran at a distance at ground, he really did throw in the towel pretty early that day. So I worry about his ability to get 2 turns in here. But dangerous speed coming off a big win as a 3-year-old already. A dangerous horse. Matt, I know Dior, getting back to a little bit of your concerns, I think he stepped up so much when he went from that Golden Gate maiden race on the turf to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Remember, he was wide, and he was actually wide in both of his losses. And he was right there in both of them. If you look back at the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, Storm the Court had a better trip, and Ano Dior just missed. He gets some big changes this time. He's been working really well. He's been working 6 and 7 furlongs at Golden Gate. I think he's a distance horse with that Medagliadoro top it breeding, so I think 9 furlongs is going to be great for him. But the big change is getting Joel Rosario in the irons for the first time and also getting blinkers for the first time. I think that pushes him over the top as not only the horse to beat in the Risen Star. And by the way, if he gets beat down here but runs a good race, I'm not going to be completely off him. This is the first race of the year. Although he ran about 9 weeks ago, I expect a good race. But I think Ano Dior is going to be a horse that just gets better and better, not a flash-in-the-pan 2-year-old at all, in my eyes. Matt, there's another interesting horse I need to talk about in here, and he's actually my favorite of the Brett Calhoun contingent. I like him even more than Digital. In fact, he beat Digital in his debut performance. I'm talking about Mailman Money. I don't really like the post out there, number 11 post he drew for this one, his 3rd lifetime start. But the Son of Golden Sense beat Digital early on, and then he came back with a really impressive win at Fairgrounds in his allowance. So he's 2 for 2. Reminds me a little bit of a nice Golden Sense Calhoun had last year, of course. So Mailman Money, I think, is the potential up-and-comer out of this field more than anybody after my top pick.
Yeah, Brian, he's a horse that I'm going to use too. Didn't have a perfect trip in that race either. Got bumped a bit. Was racing wide out there. You'll have some decent odds with that horse. Another one that I'm going to use in my exactas is also on the outside there. New York Traffic, who made his debut for Gulfstream Park trainer Safi Joseph last time out in an allowance race, going a distance and just romped by 6 races in there. Safi Joseph Jr. seems to be a little bit of a magic man at times and can really turn horses around. So who knows what we're going to get from that horse, but we'll probably get some decent odds. Lynn's Map, I think we should mention, may get bet. I was pretty disappointed in his effort in the Smarty Jones at Oaklawn Park as a horse that I liked in here. He just came up empty there.
Yeah, it was a muddy track at Oaklawn Park. Maybe Lynn's Map can bounce back, but it's hard to necessarily jump on his bandwagon after that performance. As far as NY Traffic, I don't like his 2-year-old form, and unless Safi Joseph is some kind of miracle worker, I'm thinking that Gulfstream Park race might have been just very light. 12 post, I can't jump on him as a horse coming off that win, but yeah, Safi Joseph really has been churning out winners of late. My long shot in here is actually Major Fed, son of Ghost Sapper for trainer Greg Foley. He had a decent rally in his first race, and then his second race was a nice rallying win at Fairgrounds. He's moving up in class, and it's a tough spot, but I think Major Fed could be a horse on the rise and a horse that can rally up into the exotics in this one. But as you know, I'm on Ano Dior. Mailman Money would be my second choice, and I wouldn't be shocked if Mailman Money is the second choice, unfortunately. And Matt, you're going with a little bit of a long shot. I'm not sure what the odds will be, but I think Liam's Lucky Charm will get you some odds for sure in there. All right, those are the Derby preps at Fairgrounds. The last 2 races of the day, 9 furlongs. Mile 16th a couple races earlier is the Rachel Alexandra, Matt, and we have two of the top horses in the Kentucky Oaks list in here. First off, the champion British Idiom returning for trainer Brad Cox, and then Finite, who's on a real roll, Matt. Who do you think is the horse to beat here in the Rachel Alexandra?
Well, certainly the horse to beat and the likely favorite is British Idiom, who is the reigning 2-year-old filly champion, has done absolutely nothing wrong in her 3-race career, with that maiden special weight victory at Saratoga, followed by a big win in the Alcibiades at Keeneland, and then a super impressive victory in the Breeders' Cup. So British Idiom is the horse to beat, likely favorite, but hey, she's coming back from a layoff. You know, it's not that long. The Breeders' Cup was in November for her first start in 2020. So I'm going to go with Finite, who is on a 4-race winning streak for Steve Asmussen. And we know that Asmussen has a way of getting horses on a roll and them getting better and better with racing. And that's exactly what's happened with Finite. Just about a race every month. A little more on the emphasis on the race than what's going on the training track is a way of Asmussen finding a lot of success. You're not going to get a huge price in here. Definite second choice, but my pick, just because of recency, will be Finite.
Yes, I agree with you, Matt. British Idiom should be favored over Finite in here. And I do like her a little bit better than Finite. I'm not sure if Finite has beaten really top horses yet. This will be her toughest test to date. But British Idiom, that Alcibiades was so good. I'm going to say something crazy here, in that maybe the race before the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies was actually better than the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, although she beat some good California fillies in Donna Veloci and Bast in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. So obviously British Idiom has got it done. She's got it done in different places. It is over 3 months, just over 3 months since she last ran, so that's a question mark and certainly an advantage for Finite. Finite has a race over the track, but I have a lot of faith in not only this filly, but her trainer Brad Cox having her ready for this. So I do point to British Idiom as the horse to beat in here, and I'm expecting a good effort from her. Now, Finite wasn't far ahead of a bunch of horses in the Silver Bullet Day. His glory was 5th. She gets blinkers on, and I don't think it's a total throwout for trainer Tom Amos. Ursula ran a big race on the pace. Daughter of Tappet may be getting better. And she showed a real gameness down the stretch to finish second in the Silver Bullet Day. And then, of course, Temper's Rising, Matt. The pace was not all that fast, and she really came running, the Daughter of Bayern, for trainer Dallas Stewart. That was a big rally she ran in the Silver Bullet Day, and she has to be considered as well.
Yeah, those horses from the Silver Bullet Day, obviously that finish makes them look very closely matched, and it is British Idiom's race to win. So maybe it's those Silver Bullet Day horses racing for second place behind British Idiom, or maybe it's just going to be a cold exacta box with British Idiom and Finite. Not the greatest batting race. I think the first division is much more interesting in terms of going to the windows. Okay.
Hey, Matt, I'm going to mention a couple other horses real quick in the Rachel Alexandra, and that's Kenny McPeek's got two interesting lightly raced horses in here. Swiss Skydiver has some stakes experience, wasn't beaten much at Tampa Bay, maybe with some trouble. She's lower on the morning line. I actually like the other McPeek better. Her name is Impeccable Style. I like what she did in her progression of 2 maiden races here up here at Churchill Downs, the daughter of Uncle Mo. I think she might be a nice filly. She's moving up in class, but I'm not super impressed with the fillies coming out of the Silver Bullet Day. So I think Impeccable Style, a horse who might be the longest shot on the board, or probably the 6th shot on the board out of 7 here in the Rachel Alexandra, is a filly to take a long look at in here. Maybe she doesn't beat British Idiom, but maybe she runs a big race to get into the exotics. That's Impeccable Style in the Rachel Alexandra. I think this race has serious Kentucky Oaks implications, Matt. But I'm high on Taraz, and then we saw what Venetian Harbor did against the short field and lost for Jenny's. So British Idiom, not quite like the champion on the male side, stormed the court, but she has some work to do to catch up to fillies who may have recently passed her by a little bit. We'll see if the champion can answer what we've seen with impressive wins recently from Taraz and Venetian Harbor as we move closer to the Kentucky Oaks, the first Friday in May, Matt. All right, sir, that's our show. I hope you enjoyed it, folks. We previewed both divisions of the Risen Star. First, probably big Kentucky Derby prep of the year. The Rachel Alexandra turned out to be the first big Kentucky Oaks prep, probably. Looking back at Matt and I's opinions on the San Vicente and the Sam Davis, we appreciate you watching every week, folks. If you haven't yet subscribed to our YouTube channel here at Horse Racing Nation, please do so. Hit that button now. And before we go, Matt, I want to get a parting shot from you, my friend.
Certainly. My parting shot is to thank our friend Brett Workman for all the work that he's done on HorseCenter. And this week also, thanks for putting together the show, Brett.
Thanks to Brett. Thanks to our sponsor, Derby Wars, the best contest site out there. And thanks again, folks, to you watching each week. We enjoy doing the show for you. We'll be back right here, same time next week on HorseCenter.